dogs, dogs are like, they're like babies, except in some ways they're better than babies because they can like kind of survive on their own. But in some ways they're worse because you can't talk to them. Like they don't ever breach that communication barrier.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good question. Have you always had, or are you drawn to pit bulls specifically, or has that just been the last few?
No, always. And I mean, I've only had two, but also I was like pit bulls and bulldogs have always been my favorite favorite dogs. And then just kind of coming up and being around them and really getting a sense for their personality and their spirit and seeing how they really are, other than what people kind of put them out there as.
Right.
I just fell in love with them. And then Gina got me Gotti, who was my first for, when did she get me him? 2005, I think, for my birthday. And then we got Layla like 6 months later, with him for like 13 years, 15 years. And then, I don't know, after losing both of them, I just couldn't, I couldn't get another one. I mean, I wanted to, but I needed like a buffer in between the two. So I always thought Frenchies were awesome. They're like a small version. They have that same kind of personality and a lot of the same characteristics as pits do. They're just really tiny.
Right.
And I hate small dogs so much, but they're like the one exception.
Right.
And little bulldogs and stuff, but it's kind of a cross between a bulldog and a pit bull in a small scale version.
Right.
And I just think they're the coolest dogs, man. And Bovie's just been such a blessing to me to have him around, the last 6 months and everything, and everything I was going through and changing and everything.
Right.
He's been great.
It's amazing how solid they are, intuitive emotionally, but not to the point of like overdoing empathy. Like they're like they can tell when something's up.
Yeah.
But they just want to make everything. They're just happy. Yeah. And they like bring that. I've had the same experience with every dog I've ever had. Yeah. And I lost a little silky terrier 4 years ago. Got hit by a car, like right in front of me, which is traumatic. And it's just like losing a dog. It took me like 3 weeks to recover, like to even get back to where I was, where I wasn't like, it wasn't flashing in my head.
Yeah.
Every couple of days. And it's still like, I still have like these flashes. I'll be driving and then just see it again. And it's traumatic. It's by the way, I did not mean to go dive straight into the deepest, most emotional recesses of.
Oh, you're bringing up a lot of.
I know. Well, and I remember too, when I forget who he was interviewing, but Joe Rogan asked somebody about dogs, and then they both started crying. So before both of us start bawling about our dogs, we can move on to some other things. The interesting thing is, I did, for all those of you watching, I did actually give Kevin a list of questions I might ask, and that was not one of them. So, surprise!
Those would have thrown me off the set.
Yeah. Like, we're going for the kill here. So yeah, I mean, we since the last time we talked, I know a bunch of stuff's been going on. You we're training for a fight, and I don't know how much you want to go into in terms of like what the present status as of right now is.
We can talk about it. Broke my thumb last weekend sparring. This was this past Saturday. I cracked it. I actually don't even remember it happening. I just remember it started hurting around like the third round, but I did another 7-8 rounds, not thinking too much of it. I just thought I jammed it really badly, which I've done a million times on my other hand, but working with southpaws, because the guy was fighting with southpaw, just the angles and everything are different, and there's ways to punch into arms and body parts as opposed to hurting yourself on them, and things being a little different in that aspect, mirrored in that aspect. I just caught the elbow really bad, must have came up underneath and smashed it, and like I said, I didn't think too much of it. I thought I jammed it, and later that day, I was home. It hurt a lot, but not to the point of me thinking something was seriously wrong with it. But the next day, it was huge. It looked like I had an apple inside of my thumb, and the pressure inside was so significant. I wanted to pop it. You know, I wanted to like grab a needle and let some of the blood out of there. It was hurting so badly. And then Monday, I went in to train just with my left hand. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, yeah, you might want to get that looked at just to be sure. I was like, I don't really think it's broken, you know, but, you know, 4 weeks out from my fight, I should probably know. And so, one, I don't injure it more. And two, if this is the case, then I need to, you know, let them know ahead of time so they have ample time to get him another opponent or whatever the case may be. And got it x-rayed that day. I'm like watching the doctor as he's looking at the thing. He's like, oh, you got a pretty giant crack in your hand there. I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I mean, how bad could it be? You know, I was thinking maybe it's just a little hairline fracture that, you know, I can just tape up and be fine. And then I looked at it, and there's this huge split right down the bone where it's like disconnected, you know, to the degree of
I'll stick the picture over on the video so they can see.
Yeah, it's not pretty. And I was shocked by how bad the break was. And you know, it still hasn't hit me 100% yet. But like even that day I was like, oh, you know, I'll just deal with it and maybe just tape it up. And I was still contemplating fighting anyway. You know, I've had plenty of fights where I've gone into with broken hands already and pretty severe injuries. But even this one, that day sparring, just people hitting it was significant, and it was extremely painful. I'm like, yeah, I could go in there and fight one-handed, and I've done that before, and I'm playing around with these ideas, and you know, there's just so many other things I can use. But you know, thinking about coming off a year layoff, coming off of 2 losses already, do I want to go in there one-handed? Of course I do. Of course I do. Yeah. What's, you know, of course I do. But should I? Is it smart? Is it intelligent to do ever? No, but particularly at this stage in my career, particularly after where I'm at right now, the last thing I want to go in there and do is be 50% or a quarter or whatever the case may be. And yeah, it's very difficult. I think I've pulled out of 1 fight ever, and that's when I blew my knee out. All the others, every other injury I've had, every other sicknesses I've had, everything that's ever happened to me never kept me from fighting. I always went forward anyway, which, you know, isn't the most intelligent thing to do, but it's what allowed me to get the experience that I have had and fight as much as I have had, and all of these things that it's helped me. You know, it's caused some long-lasting damage as well, but those are things I was willing to weigh out in order to progress. In a situation like this, again, after everything I've already done, it's not the smartest thing to do, and I'm trying to be a little more intelligent about my career and what I'm doing at this stage than, you know, I've done that before. I've put in the hours, I've put in the work, I've put in the fight regardless of what the situation is already. It's like now is the time to be intelligent and hopefully make this stage of my career as healthy and long lasting as possible, as opposed to just go for it anyway. And that's really been something I've been learning over the last few years, is training more intelligently, being smarter, being healthier physically, mentally, spiritually, all of these things, where coming up it was always just go, put every emotion and thought in the back of your mind and go forward. And I think that you have to do that in the beginning, but there comes a point when you've had so much experience, it's time to start using that knowledge, using those abilities, showing the distinction between you and somebody that's just coming up, where that's their only option. It's good to have that, but you don't need to rely on that once you get to a certain stage. And that's been a difficult thing for me to switch, because instinctually I just want to do that, because I know that I can push through more than anybody else, and I'll always have that above anybody that's in front of me, but not to rely on that has been a new thing for me, and a difficult thing for me to turn off and start using my experience and my ability, as opposed to just skipping over to, I got more heart than you, and I'm going to go to this.
Right. You know? Well, and you and I have had this conversation a bunch of times, and you've said this a bunch of times. And in fact, we just had a little exchange on Instagram with a girl that took that's sort of that mentality. Mm-hmm. And like you say, it's the mentality that got you where you are, mm-hmm. but it's also the mentality that will stop you from being able to do what you want to do if you don't temper it as you grow. And you are not a stranger to not considering an injury to be a real injury. I mean, just I've only heard a couple of the stories, but the couple of the stories that I have heard, in fact, you just posted about the China fight. Right. The dude had the steel plate and cracked your skull. Mm-hmm. And what was it? Was it that you fought again?
I did fight again the next day. I didn't know I had a fractured skull at the time. Not that would have stopped me, because I still tried to. I was getting ready to fight in Vegas when I found that out. And I would have fought anyway, except the guy that diagnosed me was the ring doc. He's like, no, you're not allowed to fight. I was like, come on, man. Thankfully, he didn't let me, because I easily could not be here today.
Right.
But that was my mentality. And
do you think is it for you, is it more a mentality of knowing that something's wrong and knowing that are you focused just on what you're wanting to do? Or does your mind just not recognize that pain is probably something more significant than just, you know what I mean? Like, because I know I made a transition when I went from just being somebody who's fighting or, training on the team to this last series of fights that I did, where for me it was less about, I'm so focused and concerned about everything that's going to happen, to I'm going to fight a bunch of times, and whatever happens, and if I get, if I bang a shin in training, whatever, mm-hmm. like if I catch somebody's elbow, whatever. And interestingly enough, mentally, and I don't know what happened, if something clicked in my brain, or if just I had been training long enough to where my nerves were deadened a little bit and my body started to realize what it could handle. Mm-hmm. But I catch elbows all the time. I catch knees, and it doesn't hurt like it used to.
Yeah.
So for you, I mean, do you find that you've had so many rounds in the gym and so many things have happened to where you just don't feel it, or is it that you're you're pushing beyond pain in those situations?
I mean, it's not that I don't feel it, because I do feel it a lot, and it's understanding how to work around it. It's understanding how to process and deal with it and not dwell on it. When you have an injury happen, or anything for that matter, you have a choice to make. Either use it and stop or push past it, whatever the case may be. And for me, it's always been push past it. It doesn't matter what it is, because there's various degrees of injuries and fatigue and all of these things, and we all have this line where you're not going to go past it, whatever that is. And everybody's line is very different. For me, I'm always on the extreme end. It doesn't matter what's happening. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how much pain I'm in. It doesn't matter how much I'm losing. It doesn't matter how injured I am. I'm going to go forward regardless, because I find that once you set that bar, to me, you've partially given up anyway. Like you rarely go to that point. You go just below that, and wherever that bar is, you're going to be just below it. Mine, I just got rid of the bar completely. Like, I'm going to go till I'm dead, basically, because I saw, it's kind of like how you develop strength is the same way you develop weakness. It's a slow and steady progression. Each time you push a little farther, you don't allow things that limited you in the past to keep you from doing things in the future. And each time you gain strength, and we steadily progress until one day we're stronger than you could ever imagine. And it's the same way in the other direction. You slowly start making exceptions. You say, oh, I'm not feeling very good today, or this injury is a little too much. I'm going to hold back, I'm going to hold back, and I'm going to hold back. And each time you start making more and more and more excuses. You don't just one day all of a sudden are this weak individual. It's a steady decline, just as it is going the other direction. So people don't, I think naturally some of us are a little stronger than others, but it's still a developed thing. You
have to practice it.
You have to practice everything, whether it's weakness or strength. It doesn't just happen overnight, regardless of the individual. It was all I say is like, either you're experienced or you're a crazy person. That's the only way you're brave, because you know what you're facing and you go forward anyway, or you just don't care and you've never experienced it and you're a lunatic.
So which one are you? Actually, this is one question that I did want to ask. You came at it a different angle, but
yeah, I think both, really, because in the beginning I didn't have the experience, I didn't have the knowledge, so it really was, I'm diving into the unknown, not even knowing what there is to be afraid of. I think with experience, I tell people, a lot of people, like people that are nervous to fight and all these other things, most of the times it doesn't get better in that aspect, because the more you fight, the more you understand how dangerous it really is, how easily things can go wrong.
And the people you're fighting are better.
People you're fighting are better. The pressure gets more. The views get more. All of these things tend to get worse and amplified over time, and hopefully you've learned how to deal with it better. But that feeling rarely just goes away. I've seen people with hundreds of fights who were so nervous before they fought. I couldn't understand it.
Right.
It's like, you have like 200 fights. What are you so nervous about? And that's it. You have more knowledge of the thing you were afraid of in the beginning, not less.
Right.
You just have more experience,
right.
But that doesn't change the feeling. The only thing that's different is your willingness to go forward regardless. And I think that's such an important thing for people to understand, is it's not about whether you're afraid or not. That doesn't matter. All of us have different degrees of fear, or whatever you want to call it, nerves, anxiety, or just wanting to perform well, and there's various degrees of what that fear is. But moving forward anyway, you see people, you don't know what they're feeling on the inside, whether they're scared, hurt, tired, etc. Especially at the high level, you learn how to just turn your outward expression off,
right,
regardless of what's going on inside, because that's so detrimental. The person in front of you, you see they're scared, you see they're hurt, you see they're tired, it's only going to make it that much worse. So you turn it off regardless of what's going on, because it's not going to make things any better. So you have to internalize a lot of these things. I totally forgot where we were going with that.
Well, what I'm getting at is, and you've actually said, what you haven't answered yet is whether you're crazy or experienced. We'll come back to that in a second. I think I know the answer. I think it's obvious, the answer. But also, you have said in the past that you get almost too relaxed sometimes going into fights, and you mentioned that it depends on how you feel about who you're going up against, and that's another whole other avenue we could talk about. When you know the person that you're going to fight because you've seen them fight, or they're experienced enough, like you get to that level. Mm-hmm. Like every person I've ever fought, I never met until we were across from each other in the ring, and there's something blissful about that ignorance.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know anything about you, you don't know anything about me. Yeah. We're going to throw ourselves at each other for 10 minutes. And afterwards, we're going to be friends. And in fact, I just had a great little exchange with the last guy that I fought on Instagram. Mm-hmm. He's a good dude. I told him he should come down and spar with us sometime. But walking back to where I was going, you go into fights kind of taking a different approach. Do you find that is it because you're not nervous, not scared? I don't know if those are the right words, or is it just that you naturally are sort of zenned out or chill about things, or maybe I'm misrepresenting.
I mean I am, and I don't know why I'm that way, and I don't know what it is that causes that. And as I've told you, a lot of times it's not a positive thing. It can be detrimental to me because
it takes you around to wake up.
Yeah, you need to have a healthy fear of everybody and a healthy sense of being in something dangerous, regardless of who's in front of you. It's difficult for me to turn that on if I've seen them and know they don't have much to offer. I mean, of course, anybody can do anything at any time, but there's still a degree of that where it's like this person could literally try as hard as they wanted to hurt me, and they couldn't.
Right.
You know, anybody can come up with some random thing they don't see, of course, but there's still a degree there where you go up there against somebody else, like everything they're doing is going to hurt me and they can end me at any moment. I need to keep myself higher level than I've ever been in my entire life. So that's the degree of things in there. And for me, I need to have that healthy respect and fear of the person in front of me, because it keeps me sharp. It keeps me held back to a degree, and helps me to be a lot more intelligent about what it is that I'm doing in there, as opposed to just going forward like whatever. I'm just gonna keep going, because I know eventually you're gonna get to a point where you can't handle it anymore, and I can take everything that you've got.
Right.
You know, and that's not a very intelligent way to fight. And why, for me, my worst fights have been against people who are not at the caliber of the better people. You know, I don't fight good. I lose my ability to flow in there, and I mean, that's really the thing. Just letting go and fighting. I'm thinking too much, or not thinking enough.
Right.
You know, it's I don't like it.
You don't have that. It's like, I don't know if you saw the what was it? I think 2-3 weeks ago, I put up that video, the girl that kicked me in the face. Mm-hmm. So she is like a little chihuahua, like a little bulldog. She, like, when you spar with her, she's going to hit you in the face. That's her goal, is to she doesn't want to do anything else except hit you in the face as many times as she can. And she walks right at you. And I probably weigh twice as much as she does. So these are very, very small. Mm-hmm. But there was one of those moments where most of the things she throws, obviously I'm going to walk right through it. But in that same way, you get a little lazy with like keeping your shoulder up or keep my hand up, and then something comes through. And like I said, I felt that in my jaw for like 3 days. Yeah. And so that's like on a small scale, but it's the same kind of thing. Like you go into something thinking, oh, well, I'm here and you're there. That doesn't absolve you from the consequences of getting caught with something.
Yeah, and it's you have the same problem on the opposite end when you're overly trying too hard. Be like, I just need to get this person out of there. You know, they can't do anything to me. I'm just going to end them, because you're not firing correctly. Their timing's off. Your rhythm's off. You're trying too hard.
Sure.
You know, trying too hard is just as bad as not trying enough.
Right.
And on both those sides of the table, you're not going to have a very good performance. And that's been something that's kind of held me back in a lot of fights, and something I've had to learn and to teach myself how to keep that same mind frame regardless of who's in front of me. And my boxing coach, Jose, he framed it in a really good way for me. It's like, it should not be about who that person is. You can't rely on that, because especially at this stage, you're not always going to be in there with somebody who's 100 times better than you. So it can't be about that person. It has to be about you, what your expectations of yourself are. You need to hold yourself to this high standard that you hold the people who are there at. Sure. Hold yourself there and show the difference of levels of the person you're in there with. Don't drop down to their level and just be lazy about it and just coast through. It's not that I was coasting through. I think I didn't have the right mentality in there, and I was viewing it all wrong. And I never really had somebody frame it in that way for me, to where I was like, I get that. That makes a lot more sense to me. Because before, it's like I was trying to lie to myself and be like, they're dangerous. I mean, I always put the work in the gym, of course, but just being in there and you just don't feel that. And like, I need to feel that sense of danger in order to hold myself at such a high level. And when I don't, I can't pretend.
It's hard to like make yourself feel afraid.
Yeah.
If you're not.
Yeah. So, but to think about it in a different mind frame, like regardless of what that person is doing, hold this, because this has nothing to do with them. And that just clicked in my head one day after he said it to me, and I was able to start pulling that out more in sparring and things like that when I didn't need to have it, but I kept myself sharp regardless of what was going on in front of me. And
now I have a question for you. Was that before the last time you and I sparred? That he said that to you?
Yeah.
Okay, because I felt it.
Yeah, and
not that obviously not that I felt like you were coming at me, but like there was none of the, when we've sparred in the past, and I think because we've known each other for a little while and like we're friendly with each other, there's sort of like a easy back and forth, and you kind of like you're kind of messing with me in the way that only someone who's at your level can with someone like me, you know. Whereas this last time that we sparred, and I get also you're in fight camp now, so like the focus gets a little more.
Yeah.
But it was almost like an exponential increase, not in savagery or aggression, but in everything was solid. I got hit with a lot of stuff, and it changed it for me too. Same exact thing. I had to think, okay, so we're serious. Like we're gonna have a real round here. You know? Whereas a lot of times it's like you'll just like mess around and like toy with me is kind of the word, and then kick me in the leg like 40 times, and I keep trying to check it, and I only check one at the very end. This one was like, all right, we're pushing, we're actually moving, and we're both getting better because of that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest thing is one for me, remembering like what forced me to get better, and that was I got the shit kicked out of me for years and years and years by people who just didn't care that I was smaller than them or not as experienced as them. Like that is what makes you better. There's of course a degree to that. You don't just need to beat the hell out of everybody, but keeping myself sharp forces you to be sharp as well. And as you said, it's not just about me like beating you up. Keeping myself in a sharp mind frame and holding myself accountable, I can do that without causing you damage.
Right.
But me doing that brings that out of you, and me just screwing around and having fun. Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for that, but that's not doing any benefit to you. And what's really the result of all of it, or the what are we looking to do here? And that's we're all trying to get better.
Right.
So by me holding myself at a higher standard will bring that out of you as well.
I like to think too that you being, and I totally agree with you, there's definitely a time and a place for messing around in because it's fun, like it's relaxed and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that you sparring that way with me, I like to think ups my level a little bit, which makes it's what's the word, exponential. You going more serious with me makes me going more serious with you, and so like the level of what we're trying to do increases, and obviously, it comes with the caveat that my level can only increase so far, but still I think you get to that point where it's helping to push through, and you kind of. It's like you said before about getting stronger and getting weaker. I think you become what you practice.
Yeah.
And if you practice, I can do whatever I want to people that are less experienced than me, then that's what happens when you fight. If you practice, it doesn't matter who you are, I am going to do my thing for me. And I love that you said that too. I haven't thought about it that way, but it's about making myself better, and it's about improving on me. Then it doesn't matter who is right.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do your thing and improve, because that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's just about holding yourself to a higher standard, which in turn holds everyone around you to a higher standard, because if they're not holding themselves to that standard, they're going to be weeded out. Like, get out of here, go do something else.
Right.
This isn't for you. This is a serious time. This is for people who are seriously put in work. If you want to go screw around, you can go do that. If you're not here for the same reasons as me, you can go do that elsewhere. That's something that you're surrounded by when you go to a place like Thailand. You don't have to adjust your level. It's like, this is the only level there is. we're serious. There's different levels of ability, but we're all here with that same mind frame. And I think that's something that's very important to bring out here, because it's easy to fall into we're just getting a workout in.
And another thing too, this is we're actually staying sort of on the same topic, and I want to dig in a little bit further in a second. But I think the other thing about training and living here in the States is that most people you're going to train with have other jobs. Mm-hmm. Like they make a living not fighting. And they may fight, like we got a bunch of people that are fighting amateur, and some people do fight professional, but they teach at the gym or other things that way. It's not, fighting is not their primary source of income.
Yeah.
And so they don't have there's a difference in the drive. Like in what exactly we're talking about. We're not all here for the same reason. Mm-hmm. And so in that instance, we kind of have to manufacture it, because we don't have any fear that if we don't, we're not going to feed our families. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the context is different for us than it is for people in Thailand. And I think going there and at least interacting with people who it's their livelihood, I think makes a huge difference in the way that you approach the training. And I haven't actually been to Thailand, but I've spent enough time, people like you and other, fighters. And I tend to be a little bit more cerebral anyway. So I kind of like think about things like that. But I think it's important to realize that even though it's not like this or homelessness, you can still bring that level of seriousness, because there are people who do have that.
Yeah, and I do think that it's important to always have that in your mind. For me, especially because, I tend to gravitate more towards wanting to help everybody out and almost not be a coach to them, but I'm like, I'm looking out for you, but then I'm not looking out for myself. Right. And this is my job, and this is my livelihood, and this is how I make my money. And if all I'm ever doing is giving out and weakening myself, like I can get very easily injured by screwing around because I didn't hold myself to that level. And whose fault is that? That's mine. Instead of, oh well, I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to, like make you feel defeated or all of these things. Like I can't be responsible for that. If you don't elevate your game because you feel like you just got worked, that's your fault. You don't have the same drive as me, and if you don't need to be in here with me, and that's okay. I don't have to baby everyone or drop down in order to lift everybody else up. Me being who I am and holding myself to a higher standard brings that out of individuals, not by like dropping down and like trying to give you a hand. Of course, there's always that level of balance there. I don't need to just be over here by myself holding it to such a high standard that I can't even get any training partners.
Right.
But it's almost like I became a coach in a sense, towards like I'm looking out for all of these people, and in the process of that, I'm losing my sharpness and having unnecessary injuries or unnecessary thoughts or all these things, because I'm trying to help people out and trying to be a good training partner for them, but at the same time, I'm weakening myself. Right. And there is a balance in there, and there is a way of keeping myself sharp and in turn causing what I want to have happen, and that's other people raising their expectations of themselves and bettering themselves or realizing this isn't for them.
Right.
I think that's such an important thing, especially in the beginnings. Like, if this isn't for you, you're better off finding that out today than in 10 years when you've put so much time and effort into something that you didn't really want to do to begin with. So,
well, like if you coddle somebody and make somebody think they're bigger than they are, I mean, this is a fairly, this sort of topic has been brought up, that's the thing about trophies, like participation trophies and stuff.
Yeah.
The stakes are much higher here. If you coddle somebody and make them think, oh, I'd landed the shot on Kevin Ross. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can land body shots on Kevin Ross. Then they might get 3 or 4 fights in, again, low level, do really well. And then when it becomes a real thing, now they've invested all this time and energy, just like you say, and if they don't take it seriously, it can cause serious problems. They can get injured physically, they can get injured mentally. And I think, the interesting thing too is understanding that level of seriousness and that level of understanding where you are, that self-awareness, like the application is different. For you, it's your job. So you have to spend the time in that serious mode. Mm-hmm. I understand that it's not my job.
Yeah.
But I understand that it's your job. So when you and I spar, or when we work together, whatever we're doing, I understand that it's about you. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do everything that I can to give you the best work that I can, mm-hmm. because I know that it's about your job. But that's because that's the level that I'm at. When I'm first starting out, I wouldn't step in and spar with somebody like you. I wouldn't step in and spar at all. You know what I mean? And having that understanding, if you're somebody who's getting into training, you want to start fighting and all this stuff, understanding that there are people better than you, and they're gonna hit you many times. Mm-hmm. There are people worse than you, and just like you say, spending too much time beating up the younger kids mm-hmm. isn't actually going to make you any better.
Yeah.
But having that just awareness of, and understanding that your relationship to the sport and the way that you have to approach it has to change, and you have to be aware of where everybody else is as well, because it's like people are preparing for fights. And even it's you're in a fight camp versus not in a fight camp. Like mm-hmm. just having that cognition, understanding. Okay, we're going into this. Maybe we're going to goof around a little bit, but like you're in a fight camp.
Yeah.
Okay. And I went into that round, not to toot my own horn, but I went into that round fully understanding. Especially, I'm also pretty good at reading faces.
Yeah.
And it was written on your face, this is going to be a real round. And I was like, all right, here we go. And then they told me, give him that southpaw, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get hit a lot of times now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important to have that awareness and that understanding of where you are. There's one thing I want to talk about before we shift from this topic, and that is, I want to dig a little deeper into fear. You're not afraid of fighting, because I think the answer to the question, by the way, which we still haven't gotten to, is that he's just crazy. Was there a point that you can remember where you were afraid and then you decided that you weren't, or something happened and you became unafraid of fighting? Have you never been afraid? What is it? What's your relationship with fear?
I think maybe it's just what I process it differently than a lot of people do, and it affects me in a different way. I mean, I have like performance anxiety where like I don't want to forget I had this fear of like forgetting how to fight, and like I'd be out there just like brain dead or something, and or not fighting to my ability level.
Sure.
Is something. I mean, that's probably my biggest thought, is not having a good performance, or dropping down to somebody else's level. That's something that weighs heavily on me a lot. I don't know why I don't have that same kind of fear that I see most people have, and I've mentioned this before, but I didn't. It wasn't something that I realized that was different in me until many years after I started, and I started seeing people, and especially high-level people, prior to their fights, and I didn't really get it. I didn't understand what they were feeling. I don't really know how to explain it very well.
Do you just not really get scared of things? Are you not afraid, or are you?
I know what fear is. Like, I don't.
I think I think you answered it. He knows what fear is, guys.
Yeah, I do know what fear is.
He knows what it is.
I don't have that. Like, when I go and give a talk somewhere, for me, that I fear in that. I have fear in forgetting what I want to say. It's just different. I think maybe because fighting for me is something that I know will just come out, where speaking is something I feel like I have to remember, and there's words and how I want to come across. They're similar in a way because I want to do my best, and I always want to give as much as I possibly can. But something about fighting, relaxes me. It really calms me down. It allows me to just be free. I can really let go. And I mean, that's when I fight my best, is when I do just let go and let it all come out, and have that healthy respect and fear of the situation and the performance, but doing it without any real thought. And maybe that's why I don't have that same kind of fear, because I'm not running through these scenarios and, oh, what if this, what if that, what if the other. Part of that, especially now, is I have been through just about anything you can possibly go through in fighting, and I've been through it. My very first fight, I lost and got stopped, so that got taken care of right away. It was like, all right, well, I had to deal with that day one. Like, what was it like to lose? What was it like to get stopped? Having to deal with that from the first day forced me to overcome those things and face them head on. You know, as we were saying earlier, I think it's very important to get thrown into the deep end right away, because you need to see how bad it can be, and if this is what you want to do anyway.
Right.
You know, I always use that Hulk Hogan story as something for people to think about. And the first day he ever wrestled, he got his leg snapped in half. The coach grabbed his leg, broke it in half. Like, you want to do this, come back tomorrow. You know, because like, you need to understand what can happen to you in here, and if you want to do it anyway, that shows that you really want this. And the worst thing that happens to a lot of people is they do so well out the gate. They go for these long undefeated streaks. They don't have to face these things that eventually you will have to face. And you build this false sense of confidence, and you're not realizing how weak you are because you don't have to face these things.
Right.
And eventually you've built up so much over here, completely weakened over here, and it happens, and you have nothing to rely on to hold you up. And so many people I saw, when they finally had that loss, a lot of them never fought again because they didn't have to deal with it prior to that. And when things are easy, you don't strengthen yourself. You don't build up this foundation of things that you will need in order to progress. And that's why it's so important to get as much experience as you can and to fight the best people you possibly can, because those are the things that you're gonna need to have to rely on when things get tough, especially in a fight. There will be these moments that happen where you need to have that strength of losing, of being injured and pushing forward anyway. And so many people don't experience that until it's too late. And it's like, you don't want to be performing when you have to question, can I keep going?
Right.
That's the worst time to figure out the answer to that question. You need to know the answer. You need to know the answer. And we have all these questions come up in training. That's why it's so much more important to push yourself past the point of quitting in the gym, because you're not going to do it out there if you haven't done it in the gym.
Yeah.
If you haven't answered these questions already, it comes out in the fight regardless. We lie to ourselves a lot prior to that and be like, oh, when it's showtime, I'm going to turn it on.
Right.
No, you're not.
Yeah, you can't hide.
You can't hide, and you can't pretend.
I think, knowing you, I think that's probably, I think the being able to take solace in the fact that it's such a pure form of communication, fighting, and that you can't lie, that the other person can't lie either. I think for you, and this is me playing literal couch psychologist here for a second, but I think that just from knowing you, because I'm similar at a different level, obviously, I think that's probably part of the reason why you're so comfortable in there, is because you understand that it's a conversation. You know, you're getting in there, and they can't lie, and you can't lie, and you feel comfortable in the honesty of what's happening. Like, it's going to be what it's going to be, and once you get in the ring, nothing else matters. Like, everything you already did, and now it's just let it play out.
Yeah, that's very insightful of you, and I've never thought about it that way either, and I think you're absolutely correct. I know where my line is, and I know I can express who I am as an individual, and that's going to come out. The truth is going to come out.
Yes.
What I've done is going to come out. Who I am as a person is going to come out, and I am extremely confident in who that person is. And regardless of what happens in there, I know that will play out and that will be expressed in that ring. And that's why I'm so drawn to fighting, I think, because it's the purest form of expression, and it's the realest way for me to communicate who I am and what's inside of me. And that has nothing to do with the outcome of a fight, because you can see that, you can see who somebody is, especially when things aren't going well in there, and you can't hide who you are as a person in there. And that's really why I've always been very drawn to fighting, is because, especially when you see people putting on a show on the outside,
right?
When you can put on the biggest show you want, but you can't put that show on when you're in there,
right?
And the truth will come out.
Yep.
So I always try to express to people, like, if you are this individual and you want to play it up, do that, but don't pretend to be something you're not, because you will be exposed the second that bell rings. Yep. Everybody around you, everybody who's there, is going to see exactly who you are. You can lie to yourself, you can lie to everybody else, but it's going to come out in there. And what you've done on the outside, did you train hard enough mentally, physically, spiritually, all of these things will be exposed. And particularly the people who know are going to know. So
right.
They know exactly, like, when people get hurt or knocked out,
right?
There's still a degree of, yeah, but you really just gave up. Most people might not know it, but the people who know. And that's something that you can't hide.
Well, I've said it to myself.
Said this one time.
I said this one time when I was sitting over. I mumbled it to myself, but it's the thing that I have been drawn to with training, and even the few fights that I've had, is that same thing, because I've spent so much time in a world where you are judged based on what you say about yourself, what you say about yourself. And there's something about getting in the ring and letting the truth of your preparation do the talking for you. Something so raw and unmarketed. I do a lot of marketing, and there's no spin. You can't get up at the end of the fight that you lost and be like, yeah, well, I won because I trained more. Before they even hit, the first bell rings and you walk out and you're like, okay, I won. And they're like, what? And you're like, no, I've been training for 6 weeks and he's only been training for 4, so I won. And it's like, no, you don't know. The fight is what tells the story of what's been happening the last 6 weeks. And I think that's the thing I love about combat sports in general, but Muay Thai specifically, is that there's just, you don't lie. You can't lie. It is, when you walk into that ring, there's no excuse, there's no explanation, there's no nothing. It's, how do you perform? And just like you say, the people that know.
Yeah.
The message you were trying to send is sent, or it's not sent. Something you said about, I want to dovetail off of what you said about pushing yourself further in training. One of my most vivid memories of a couple fights ago was Joe Schilling was training for, I think it was the last time he fought on Bellator, but he posted on it, or maybe it was 2 fights ago, posted on Instagram a video of him throwing up while he was training. And to me, this is what I saw when I saw that. I saw Joe Schilling, who is a world-class kickboxer, Muay Thai fighter, pushing himself hard enough in training that he was going to throw up. And everybody knows, what the line is when you're going to throw up. Like, you can think, if you've ever thrown up during training, it's that line just beyond where you want to be. Actually, it's probably quite a bit beyond where you want to be. But you know where it is. And it's not like that line goes away, was what I took from that. It's not like when you get to that level, you no longer are tired. It's just, what makes you tired is more, you do more, which is why you get to that level. And being able to push yourself to that level is what makes you perform at such a high level on the biggest stages. And it reminds me, I want to segue a little bit to another thing. I remember when I was a kid, when my mom had us all take piano lessons, and we were really into music. That was one of the biggest things that was tripped me up, was that I didn't practice enough to perform. I can practice enough to like play something well once to myself, but not ever well enough to where I could perform something perfectly in front of an audience. And what it comes down to, and the thing that has always been interesting to me, is that the way you perform perfectly in front of an audience on the piano, on the guitar, when you're singing, whatever you're doing, is you perform it 100 times, 1,000 times perfectly in practice beforehand. And then you have the confidence that you can do it when you can actually perform it. And I feel like it's the same idea. You have to be able to perform in the gym when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
Because you can't just say, oh, I'm gonna, like you said, you can't just say I'm gonna turn it on in the fight. I'm gonna go to that place in the fight, because you only, in the fight, you do what you've trained yourself to do, which a lot of times isn't what you thought you were training yourself to do, or not even what your coach told you were training yourself to do. Whatever you're actually training yourself to do, in your own, wherever you go automatically in training, that's where you're going to go in the fight. Because all the plans and the strategies and the schemes, they go out the window. Like 2 fights ago, my fight, we were talking and you said, yeah, we worked a lot. Distance, teeps, staying long. And when I spar, I clinch a lot. And so when I fought, I ignored all that staying long, teep, Kevin Ross advice and went straight back to clinch. But it's interesting how that, how that can happen, how you have to put all that work in practice in order to make it work. Anyway, that's my extremely awkward segue. I wanted to talk to you about music and about art in general, which is a totally off topic, something completely different. But if you don't know, Kevin is an amazing artist. I want to talk to you about how did you get into it? When did you get into it?
Birth.
And what is it about art that speaks to you, that drives you, that like, what is it to you? You know what I mean?
Well, as far as art goes, that's something I've done since birth, really. I mean, I've been drawing since I can remember. My mom gave me a bunch of old 30 years ago photos or drawings that I did when I was just a little kid. So that's something I've always done, and been drawn to all different mediums.
No pun intended. Been drawn to.
That's funny. So yeah, I've always loved art and been drawn to art. I didn't ever know I was gonna make a job of it or anything until there was an art school in Vegas, Art Institute of Las Vegas. They opened up, I don't remember what year they actually opened. But the thing was, when I was in high school, they didn't have any art colleges in Vegas. The only ones were on the coasts, and I did was like, even if I was to get a scholarship or something, I'm not gonna be able to afford to live out there. So what is the point of doing well in school? So I dropped out of school, and I got my GED and everything just because I felt I should. And my father was like, if you're going to drop out, you have to get your GED.
Sure.
So I did that, but I never thought I would go to college or anything. And then, they opened up the Art Institute in Vegas, and I was like, oh, there's something I can do as a career. And I started going there for computer arts and animation, and like 6 months into school is when I started training, which was January 2003. And I was like, oh, I want to stop school now because this is what
one
I
of those
want
moments
to do.
where when you know it's like, okay, we're going this way now.
Yeah, but for me, it was like, I need to finish this for myself, even if I never use this degree in my entire life. I know that I started out and wanted to do something that I'm sure a lot of people didn't think I was going to complete, and it was very important for me to finish that, which was extremely difficult because I was training full-time, working full-time, and going to school full-time those first couple of years. But I did. I finished and got my degree and everything, and I did a little bit of animation. I worked with a guy doing accident reconstruction. which was actually a lot of fun. Doing the simulations for some of them were pretty horrific and fatal accidents, which I didn't really enjoy. He's so used to it. He's a forensic engineer, and we'd go to these horrible accident scenes and see all the photos and stuff. So it's normal to him, but he would rarely tell me ahead of time if it was a fatal accident. So I'm like going through the photos, like, oh, wreck, car, then head, body. I'm like, man, I wish you would have told me.
Well, of course, this all coming from the guy who pictures of you have been posted recently covered in blood from a fight.
Yeah, well, that's different. But yeah, I did that for probably the first 2 years of training. I was doing that as well as a side job. But as far as my own art goes, painting, drawing has always been my thing. Did a little bit of computer animation and stuff, but I was never really I thought it was cool, but it was never really a passion for me. Art really has always been just something I've done. It's not the same as my passion for fighting. And there was a period of time that actually stopped completely. I just let it go. This kind of happened back in, might have been middle school, I think. And I failed in art class because I just kept doing more. Like I would do the assignment and then I'd be finished early. So I would just add to it. And my art teacher flunked me for not doing the assignment,
right.
or doing more than the assignment, which I thought was crazy, and,
right.
and instead of taking that as the teacher's an idiot, I took that as just art's stupid and, I'm just not going to do this anymore. Not realizing that teacher was not the smartest individual, but yeah, I let it go. And years later, one of my friends in Vegas, she's this amazing artist, and I was going through her stuff and I was just blown away, like how cool her stuff was. And then I tried to start drawing again, and I realized how crappy it was all of a sudden, and realized you have to continually try to improve things or else they're going to get worse. You either get better or you get worse. There's no just leaving things as they are. As soon as you stop progressing, you start declining. And I vowed to never let my art slip away again because of that. So I've always maintained it, regardless of how much I'm pushing it or not. It's something that I try to do on a daily basis, even if I'm not doing pieces or things like that, just a little sketch here and there, just to keep myself relatively sharp. And it's tough to do. It's tough to do anything while I'm training for fights, which I'm always training for fights, even when I don't have a fight. But I know how important it is to maintain these skills that I don't want to lose. There's so many though that it's hard. There's drawing, there's writing, there's music, there's speaking, there's all of these things, and trying to do a little bit of those every single day just to hold on to them and not let them slip, all while giving 100% of my time and energy into training. It's a difficult thing to balance.
Do you find that the art and music, all this stuff sort of comes in? I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to go into all that. It's fascinating to me that there are as many combat athletes at the highest levels that are into and proficient at artistic things at that level. Like you, Marvin plays the bass. Tiffany with poetry, there's a lot, it could go on and on and on, people that have that creative side. Do you find, this is something that's been burning in my mind, do you find that it's an outlet of something that you don't get to release in fighting, or do you find it's more just a meditation, where it's fighting to me is my release and meditation from my day-to-day, because my day-to-day is between that desk right there and then my bedroom back there, and it's all in my head. So the physicality of Muay Thai is such a break from and a meditation for that allows me to then perform here. But I'm interested when it's flipped, when your main thing is the physicality and the violence, and that aspect. Is the art, is the drawing, because you say you want to get at it, you want to do it every day. Is it like like a peaceful thing, or is it really just you just want to keep up the skills?
Fighting for me is a peaceful thing, which is weird. Like that.
I don't think it's weird at all. I totally get it.
That is the thing that brings me peace and I feel a sense of purpose and a relaxation and a release, even though it's very strenuous and physically demanded and mentally, emotionally demanding. I don't get the same thing with my art or music or anything like that. They're similar in a way, I guess. But I feel all these things are ways to express yourself. They are all artistic things. Fighting is a very artistic thing. Sure. It's a form of expression. What the ways you use that, whether it's physically or pencil to paper or musically, I think that's why there are many fighters who are artistically inclined as well, because they're all just different forms of expression, and when you learn how to do it one way, you find other ways to do it as well. But they are very different. Expressing myself in the ring and physically is very different than expressing myself on paper, with words or with art.
Do you find that now you have to, I know the answer to this is going to seem obvious, but I want to dig a little deeper. Do you find that one, either fighting or the art or those kinds of things, do you find that it's easier to communicate in the sense that, obviously you're going to say that fighting it's easier, but I think that's just because you like it more. But do you find that the expression itself it's more difficult for you to find a way to express what you're feeling, what you're going through art, or through training or fighting or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot harder through art than like training. And fighting is easy for me to express myself. Writing is easy for me to express myself because it's my thoughts and my words. Art is different. It's an expression of feelings, but I don't think my art is like that emotional, or an outlet for feelings as much as fighting is. I think fighting is something I can release anything I'm feeling into that, and it's gonna be used. It's an energy that's gonna get used, where in art it's not one size fits all of these emotions. Almost every emotion can be translated into fighting for me. There's certain ones that just don't really work out for me, but most of them can come out in a positive way, and just letting it go into that venue. Do
you find that there are specific things that inspire you, like things that you want to draw more than others? I know you've done a lot of this. Obviously, again, is a statistical inevitability that you draw a lot of pictures of fighters. Yeah, you have a lot of pictures of fighters, but it's also, and it's probably true, it's probably also the emotion that's connected to what you're drawing, to the scene, or because I know you've drawn a lot of scenarios, both of yourself and also of other people, but I feel like there must be something connected to it. But like beyond that,
yeah,
is there something that you find yourself drawn to draw?
Drawn to draw. It's always a feeling for me than it is a specific image, usually. A lot of times I might see something, a clip from a movie or a magazine article, photo, that inspires me and brings that out. But I always have a difficult time thinking of things ahead of time. I'm barely an idea person when it comes to my art. I do much better when other people have ideas and I can work with them and around them. But just to think of something like, this is what I'm going to do, bang, goes. Most of the time I just start screwing around. Or I'll need to see something that inspires what I want to do. Be like, I want to do something that kind of looks like that, or a piece of that, or the color of that, or the feeling of that. And that translate to what it is I'm actually doing than having this diagram in my head of what's going to be on the page.
Sure. Yeah, you're not planning it. I would suspect that because it's not as free-flowing of an emotional release as fighting is, which totally makes sense, that if we were to go back, I think we could probably catalog and look at all the stuff you've drawn, and we could write down. In fact, maybe I'll have you do this as a mental exercise.
Yeah, thank you.
Just write down like the things that you were thinking or feeling when you were inspired to draw that, and I think you would find some similarities.
Yeah.
Across the things that drive you there. Anyway, do you think there's anything about combat sports that lends itself to the artistic? Like, it seems like like I said, there's a significant number of people that are both artistic, whether it's drawing and painting. Marvin's also an amazing artist.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people on our team that are amazing artists as well, writing, music, all that kind of stuff. Have you thought about that? You thought about any sort of connection between artistic, that form of art, and our form of violent art?
I've never really thought about it. It has to have something to do with, I think you have to be in order to fight to a degree, I don't want to say you have to be in tune with yourself, but it shows you so much of who you are that lends itself to expressing yourself artistically in other ways. So many things in life, I think, mute a lot of our personality, a lot of who we are as an individual, if we're not aware of it. Something about training and fighting, it chips away and releases all of the static of things, and it allows you to be very clear on who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And that's so important when it comes to expressing yourself. Like, it's difficult to express who you are if you don't know who you are, and you're clouded in so many things. Cloud our mind and cloud our being of who we really are as an individual, what our soul is saying. And fighting and training forces you to see that, and you have no space for all of these outside distractions, and you learn how to block all of them out. And the more that you do it, you don't have room in your life, in your mind, and in your spirit for these outside distractions. And I mean, I find that's one of the bigger issues out there in the world, is we allow all this energy to come in, good and bad, and just cloud our being of who we are, whether it's the news or coworkers or gossip or all of these things. It's just being force-fed to us daily. And if you're not aware of it and not keeping yourself protected from it, it's gonna get in there, whether you want it to or not. You become what you're surrounded by. You become what you listen to, what you allow in your being. And fighting, for me, what I see is it keeps you in a place where you're more protected or more aware of those things that can get in there, because you feel them. You can't go into training or fighting, especially fighting, with these outside forces getting into you. You have to be extremely clear. You have to be extremely centered. Or one, you're never going to make it there. So through the training and through everything, you learn to push all these things out. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you're aware of them as they're trying to come in, which they always do. It's one of those dangerous circumstances that shows you what's really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you find a lot of people who fight are very free from a lot of bullshit in life. They find their other bullshit, which can come out for other reasons.
Right.
But it's a
lot of the head trash that will weigh you down and tie you to one place instead of being able to really understand yourself and be able to move, like do the things that you want to do. Yeah. You don't find that because you have to be, you are so often put in a position where you're so bare, you're so naked in front of everybody, mm-hmm. that you become aware of, if you approach it right, maybe that's the reason why the higher levels of people are more that way, because you do become more in tune with who you are, and that just lends itself to either wanting to express the same thing in a different way, or mm-hmm. or just seeing the opportunity to express it in a different way.
Yeah, it seems to bring out you let go of a lot of things that just don't matter, and that so many people let weigh on themselves, or they allow themselves to get so emotional over things, one, that don't matter, or two, that they have no control over. You know, when you see how little control we have over so many things, you know, it's magnified in fighting. Be like, I definitely can't control the outside. I can barely control the inside.
Right.
You see that so much clearer in day-to-day things. You know, it really centers you. It centers me for sure. I mean, I don't think this is the case with everybody, but generally, I think it allows you to see things much clearer, and the importance of things, or the lack of importance of things, that much more clear when you do this. You know, I think that's why, you know, it's not just fighting, you know, sports or anything physical. It helps you, it frees you from a lot of unnecessary weight that we allow on ourselves. You know, you shake it all loose, and you know, there's still things that weigh on you, of course, but so much that weighs so many of us down is things that have zero importance whatsoever, and that we have zero control over too.
Yeah.
I think that is much more of a significant thing, is letting go of the things that you can't control, and that have no care how much care you put on them, and
right.
You can care all day, and it's not going to change anything.
You can white knuckle your way through life, or you can be relaxed, and it's going to have the same effect on what's actually happening.
Yeah, you know what exactly.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And that's something that fighting forces you to confront head on.
Right.
Be like, there's only so much you can control, and even those things, you can't control them either.
Right.
So you just got to let go, especially like when that bell rings. None of that matters anymore. You could have not trained at all, and things might work out, or you can train your ass off for 3 months and they might not work out. And on both sides of that, you still only have so much control. You have control of how you let it affect you, what you decide to do in each scenario from there, and understanding that helps out so much across all facets of life. You know, everything in fighting relates to every other aspect of life. Totally. And the more you understand that, the more you can use it in a positive way. I find that if you choose to, it helps you really understand life a lot better, I think, because you're forced to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you teed me up perfectly for what I want to end on.
Of course.
Which is, you can't control everything, but there are some things about fighting that you should control.
Yeah.
And so much so that, and it's becoming a much bigger thing. And I don't know if you follow Kevin, you know that of late, he's been on a kick, and I have joined him in this crusade to abolish missing weight. And I think that making weight is kind of like making free throws in basketball. I don't know anything about basketball except that my older brothers played. Those are things that you can, like, you can control. Free throws, obviously, I get that you can't control everything, but you can just, I mean, there's no end to the number of free throws you can practice. And it always throws me off when people at the highest level can't make free throws. Anyway, I'm done talking about something I know nothing about. But with fighting and making weight, that's a couple of things, and then I want to let you just pour all of your fire and death into this. Why do you think people miss weight?
because it's acceptable. One. Two, because, well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One, it's acceptable. Two, people think that they need to get huge and then cut a bunch of weight, and they don't know how to do that, so they miss drastically. They put things off and think, oh, I'll just cut it all at the last minute. You know, they're not very disciplined with their training, with their eating habits. You know, and it comes back to what we were saying earlier. You think you're just going to turn it on. You think all of a sudden you're going to be in shape just because you cut weight. You know, you eat like crap, you train like crap. Your body shows the result of that, and then you think it's just a number on a scale. Well, and there's no repercussions, very few repercussions for people who don't make this weight. And you know, it's a lot more of an impact than you just not making weight. You know, the person you fought did all of this work. They did what they were supposed to do. They were professional. They made weight. They didn't come with all these excuses. They probably had all those same ones you did too. But they did their job. And for me, your first and foremost job is to make weight on that scale. The fight doesn't even matter if you can't do that. If you can't do the first thing, you shouldn't be allowed to do the second thing, in my mind. And it's extremely disrespectful to everyone who puts the time in, who sacrifices everything, who makes the weight no matter what, no matter the time frame, no matter sicknesses or injuries. You think your excuses have any validation just because they don't. There's no excuse you can have for not making weight, even if it's last minute. You agreed to the fight, you agreed to the weight class, you agreed to the time frame. It doesn't matter if it's an hour. You agreed to it. So be a professional and make weight, or don't fight. And that's the way I looked at it. I've never missed weight ever. And the circumstances surrounding these fights, I didn't allow affect that. I have an obligation to be at this number on this day at this time, and there's nothing beyond that. Everything should be that and that alone. But too often we think, well, I'll miss weight by a few pounds, but the fight will happen anyway. And a lot of times it does, but that just makes it easier for it to happen again and again and again and again. And this goes back to that same thing we were talking about, where you get stronger in these incremental moments and you get weaker at them too. So you start making exceptions: 1 pound, 2 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds. Every fight this happens, and then it becomes a thing, well, they're not going to make weight, I'm not going to make weight. And it's just okay to do and acceptable to do. And the people that don't make weight, they get another fight where the person who did is waiting around 6 months, and it's like we are rewarding people for doing this thing that should have a zero tolerance policy. And I know a big problem with that is people that haven't made weight don't want to say anything because, like, well, I didn't make weight either. And I understand the dilemma there, but we still need to hold people accountable for these things, and so severe to a degree where people are going to make weight, or else they're going to realize they can't fight. If you show up and know that more than likely you're going to get to fight anyway, regardless of what happens, I think it's the same thing with the the drug policy and things like that. Regardless of how you feel about them, these rules are in place for a reason. So you go in there, you break the rules, you get maybe a 6-month suspension after the fact. The person you fought, they lost, and you come back better than ever, and they're still like trying to build up from their loss, even though you went in there with an unfair advantage. And it's almost like we reward the people who are breaking the rules, and it's okay. We make it okay and acceptable, and you see in the long run they're still getting the benefits from it, whereas the people who acted like professionals get thrown off to the side, or they get the backlash from these people breaking the rules, and that person pays a little fine, or they have a little time off, and then they're right back to the top again. not take into account the damage they've done along the way, the cards they've messed up, the training camps and the sacrifices everybody else has gone through. You know, it's like these are beyond your comprehension. It's such a selfish thing to do, because it's not just affecting the fighter, it's affecting all the fighters, it's affecting the promotion, it's affecting everybody that's there, and it's just become this acceptable thing that is, I think there is no excuse for it whatsoever, and I just don't, I can't think of an excuse you could possibly have for not making weight. It just doesn't make sense to me, you know, unless somebody just sprung up, hey, you're fighting today in 10 minutes, let's go. You agreed to it, so that means you can make
even
it.
If they say it's at whatever 10 pounds under what you're at, if you say yes, I can do that, at that point you've entered into, you said yes not to the fight, you said yes to making weight.
Right.
And even if it's an hour from now, if you got to weigh in and you're 20 pounds over, you either go sit in the sauna for the entire hour, or you say, sorry, I can't make that weight.
Yeah.
But if they come to you and they say whatever your weight is, that's a different story, obviously.
Of course.
But if you agree that you're going to make a particular weight, that's it. I agree. It doesn't. It's not even. I don't even understand how. I can't even think of the words to say, because it seems so obvious. You know what I mean? And yet it's not. And I think you're right. There is no punishment, really, no long-lasting consequence for missing weight, because maybe at the professional level you lose a bit of your purse. Maybe you get a suspension, like you said. Maybe you pay a fine. Maybe this or that. But then you come back and you didn't have to put the stress on your body to make the weight, which means in the long run you're actually ahead. The person that you fought, if you beat them, is statistically about 75% more likely to have been knocked out, meaning not just the damage to the sport you've done and the damage to the camp and to all the other stuff, but you physically damaged the other person. Like which makes perfect sense. If you're going to be overweight, you're going to have that more power. You won't have had to go through the cut and all this other stuff. I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning. I think part of it is that there's no rules, but also there's so much emphasis put on winning all the time that I think, you know, that becomes a thing where you just, whatever you got to do to win, whatever little things you can shave off, and sometimes because there's no real consequence, we don't consider. It's not, you know, obvious to consider that making weight is as important as it is. But I agree. It's something you absolutely can control in every sense. And if you can't make the weight, then I agree that you definitely should be able to fight.
I think I do think there should be a zero tolerance. I think there should be, if you don't make weight, you automatically have to fight the next weight class up the following time. If you make that weight in that one and you want to drop back down, then you can. But I guarantee you, if you start implementing that, people will make weight regardless of the situation. Be like, next time I have to fight the next weight class up, I'm gonna make weight, or I'm not gonna agree to do this.
Right.
You know, it's one thing, of course. Yeah, you missed by maybe a pound or two, but one thing a lot of people don't think about is you miss weight, you still have an hour or sometimes much, much more to still make the weight. You know, like you missed weight on the scale, okay,
you can
go make weight. You have time. So it's not like, oh, you just miscalculated and you were a pound or two off and then you're screwed. It's like, oh, you're a pound or two off, maybe your scale wasn't correct or accurate. You have the time to do it and you still don't do it. That's it's like you have this buffer to not be perfect, and you're still not doing it. That's what I.
It's like you show up and you say you miss it by a couple pounds, and then you say, and I guarantee this is what happens. It's okay, only a couple pounds. Is my opponent still good to fight?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's good.
And it's almost like the person who made weight is viewed as the bad person if they don't take the fight. They're like, oh, I was only a pound or two off. Like, yeah, but I did my job. You didn't do your job. Why should I reward you and give you a fight?
Right.
And now I'm viewed as the weak person.
Well, and also that person's not, the likelihood that the fighter that did make weight is going to come back and say, not reward them with the fight is so low because they want to fight. That's the whole reason why they're there. So they're not incentivized to be the one to hold the person accountable. The team, the fighter, the offending fighter is not held accountable by their team because they're the ones that are saying it's fine. The commissions don't say anything. So there's nobody that's putting that pressure, except us now. But there's nobody that's really putting that pressure, saying this is something that everybody needs to take seriously. And I think it's incredible to me, because the thing actually, beyond the fact that it's so mind-blowing that you have all these chances, it's something it's totally within your control, and you can still, I remember I watched a video, one of Sanchez fights when he was fighting, there's a video on YouTube where he goes and he shows up to weigh in and he's a couple pounds over. So he goes out in the parking lot and he does a couple of laps and then he makes himself throw up. Like, he makes weight. It's not like you have, like you say, maybe the scale is wrong, maybe you're not quite exact, but you have the buffer to go lose the extra couple of pounds. But the thing that really blows my mind is that there's no regard and awareness for the fact that you missed weight when you win. And it's not, obviously there was one situation that we are familiar with, and if you follow Kevin, you're probably familiar with it as well. But it's not isolated to that one incident. I think people that miss weight, people that go in with some unfair advantage, whatever it is, when they win, it becomes about, I'm the greatest thing ever. And I feel like if the commission, if your opponent, if your team, if everybody does you the favor of allowing you to fight, even though you didn't do what you were supposed to do, the last thing that you have any grounds or right or anything to talk about is how well you did. Everything, in my mind, everything should be, I missed weight, so I better shut up.
Yeah, and to be upfront and forward about that, be like, yes, I won, but I made a big mistake. I had whatever your excuses are, but be vocal about that and be vocal about what changes you're going to make so this never happens again. Instead, we're staring at our victory here and be like, and then they do it again and again and again and again, and all of these things keep happening because nobody ever faces any real punishment or backlash or humiliation for these things, because it's acceptable and it's accepted by all of us, and nobody wants to be the one to speak up or to say anything, be like, this is bullshit, like, this is not okay, and we ignore it and we let it be okay, and it's our fault for allowing this to happen. And because nobody wants to be the bad guy, nobody wants to stand up and say this is not okay to do, and I need to make a stand for this, and we need to start making a stand for this and holding everyone, including ourselves, accountable for this. It's not like I just want to hold everybody else accountable. I hold myself very accountable, and I always have, and that's why I've always made weight, because that's the most important thing for me, because the importance of things comes in order. It's not the fight, because you have to make weight first. Then you get the fight, and so on and so forth. We so many things in fighting we try to skip ahead. It's an epidemic with across the board. We want to skip to the end. We want to skip to the glory. We want to skip to the money. We want to skip to the success. We don't want to put the work in. We don't want to put the failure in. We don't want to put the pain in, the time in. We just want the end. Why do we want the end? Because it sucks to go through all these things, but that's how you get to that point. And we need to start doing that, and we need to start holding the sport and the individual. Of course it all is about the individual, but more so than that, I find it's the coaches who allow these things to happen. Because I, for one, if I was a coach, I'd be like, you don't make weight, you are never fighting for me again unless you prove to it without a shadow of a doubt that this will never happen again, and you suffer and you die,
right,
and all of these things. But coaches make it okay for this to happen. The team makes it okay for this to happen. We all play our part in allowing this to be an okay and accepted thing. It's not just the fighter. You can only put so much blame on them just because they don't hold themselves accountable. There's other people involved as well, all across the board, and all of us need to hold each other and everyone that we're surrounded by to the same standard we expect when we get in there. And it's just going to make all of us that much better.
Totally. Well, if you know somebody who's missed weight, if you were supposed to fight somebody who missed weight, if you fought someone who missed weight, whatever it is, we want to know about it. So head over to thewaitinglist.com. There will be a link somewhere. And just give us their name and their gym and when the fight was supposed to happen. We want to put together a list. We want to hold these people accountable, and hopefully we can make the commissions pay attention. We can make it become more of a thing where missing weight is punishable by, I wanted to say punishable by death, but different kind of death, right? Because it is important, and the sport in general, this is one of those, it affects everybody and it affects all the individuals, and it's not positive anywhere. So let us know if you know anybody, and anything else you want to say about that?
Well, I think a big thing with this site is my intention is not to, well, it's definitely to put people on blast, but it's not to talk shit or to demonize people. Like, these are facts. It's not to say this is a bad person or a sucky fighter or anything like that. These are the facts. You didn't make weight, and people need to have knowledge of that, particularly if you're going in there against somebody who's consistently missed weight or pulled out of fights. It's good to know these things ahead of time. That way you can prepare yourself. So, like, if I know I'm getting in there with somebody who's pulled out of several fights, I'm hopefully going to find one or two other backups just in case. That way the promotion knows, the coaches know, the fighter knows what this person has done in the past, and they're more prepared moving forward. That may happen again. It's not a place to talk shit or to make fun of people or anything like that, or to demonize people. I don't demonize anybody. I understand things happen, of course, but you need to hold yourself accountable. Everybody needs to hold themselves accountable, and our excuses aren't valid. Once you've accepted a fight and agreed to something, what you've agreed to is that no matter what happens, I'm going to do this on this day, at this weight, at this time, and I'm going to show up, or don't do it. That's all it is. And understand that is the case when you agree to something like this, because people are putting their lives on hold. They're putting their health at risk and all of these things because they are acting like a professional. And if you aren't going to act like a professional too, go do something else. This isn't for you. This isn't for, I will do this, but if this happens, then I'm not going to. This is what's important. This is what you've agreed to. Show up, make weight, fight, regardless of the outcome, and hold yourself like a professional.
Absolutely. Well, anything else that you want to, that's burning within your soul that you just need to get out, you want to talk about?
No.
Not
that I can think of.
Cool. Thanks for joining. We'll be probably doing a few more of these as a little El Gimpy over here heals his hand and has nothing else to do. So check back for more. We'll see you soon.
Nice, man.
By the way, we got about halfway through and I realized that I left the AC on. So I hope you're not like losing feeling in your extremities as like I am.
Just my toes.